Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna
Ram 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 Hare Hare
Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare
Ram Ram
Hare
Ram
Krishna
Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram
Ram Ram Ram Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Ram Ram Ram
कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Mataji, you have to mute everyone. Then only they will hear.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय गुरु महाराज की जय All glories to the assembled devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Indu welcoming all of you to the early morning Bhakti Sangha conference call. I thank all of you for attending this session and please forgive me for interrupting your ecstatic chanting. I would like to read the 10 offenses to the holy name.
Yeah.
I'd like to read the 10 offenses to the holy name which are to be avoided, written by Srila Vyasadeva in the Padma Purana. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance to the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be an imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. 10. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachment even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Once again, thank you very much for joining the Bhakti Sangha conference call today, and I welcome all of you. Let us move on to our next session on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Mataji, since Maharaj is on the call.
We need to start recording.
Okay. Hare Krishna, I would like to hand over the call to Tiffany Mataji for introduction. Tiffany Mataji, are you there?
No, Mataji, no.
Okay, no, straight away. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
I was instructed to speak on Bhismadev because today is the occasion of Bhismastami. So we won't be able to do the verse and Bhismadev in one class because both of them require time. So, Shamagori, was it your request that I speak on Bhismadev?
Yes, Maharaj.
Well, in order to do that, to give it sufficient time, I would need the whole time. I would need the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, What do you prefer, Maharaj? You want to do verse? We can do verse today.
We can speak on Bhismadev. I think that is would be an interesting topic for the devotees. That's my choice, but you can give the final decision.
Your decision is our decision, Maharaj.
Let's say that again.
Your decision is our decision.
All right. Since I've been reading a little bit about Bhismadev, I'll make that the topic. And it's actually traditional and that we speak on Bhismadev on this particular day. This goes on in our temples generally. And so he's not a small person in terms of his spiritual status. And that's why his disappearance day is, or let's see, yes, it's called Bhishmastami. It's given prominence and it's there every year on the Vaishnav calendars. Okay, so Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastyatya Devasakarane Panchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Om Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read one verse, which is also a Bhagavatam verse from the 9th canto, 22nd chapter. If you want to put that verse up on the board, it's 9:22:19. 9:22:19. And this is also to 19. Okay, 18 and 19 are together. So we'll just read the 19th verse. Okay, Salascha Santayor Asid Gangayam Bhishma Atmavam Sarva Dharma Vidam Shresto Mahabhagavatam Kavihi. Translation. I'll read the second half of the verse. From Santanu, through his wife named Ganga, came Bhishma, the exalted self-realized devotee and learned scholar. Go to the next verse. I think the next verse also has something there. Bhishmadev was the foremost of all warriors. When he defeated Lord Parasuram in a fight, Lord Parasuram was satisfied with him. By the semen of Santanu in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of a fisherman, Chitrangana, took birth. Purport. Satyavati was actually the daughter of Uparichara Vastu by the womb of a fisherwoman named Matsyagarbha. Later, Satyavati was raised by a fisherman. The fight between Parasuram and Bhishmadev concerned three daughters of Kasiraj, Ambika, Ambalika, and Amba, who were forcibly abducted by Bhishmadev acting on behalf of his brother Vichitavirya. Although Amba thought that Bhishmadev would marry her and became attached to him, Bhishmadev refused to marry her for he had taken the vow of brahmacharya. Amma therefore approached Bhismadev's military spiritual master Parasura, who instructed Bhishma to marry her. Bhishmadev refused, and therefore Parasuram fought with him to force him to accept the marriage. But Parasuram was defeated, and he was pleased with Bhishmadev. Okay, this is a little of the history of Bhishmadev, about one section of his life. We'll go back to his beginning. It's actually a very interesting story, and Srila Prabhupada, in a few lectures, he narrates the appearance of Bhishmadev. In the heavenly planets, there was a particular sage by the name of Vasishta. And Vasishta had a cow, was a Kamandenu cow. And the Vasus, the 8 Vasus, there were 8 brothers, they're called Vastus, they stole the cow. Vasishta later found out who stole it, and he caught up with the Vastus. And then he was about to curse it, and he cursed them. And they begged for forgiveness, and he mitigated the curse. The curse was that you will fall to the earth planet and take birth from a king and from Ganga Devi, the actual personification of the Ganges River. And 7 of you, actually 6 of you, there were 7 Vastus, not 8. 6 of you will be born, and immediately you will be thrown into the Ganga, and you'll return to your position in the heavenly planet. So that will be the curse. But one whose name was Diyu, he will have to stay on the earth planet because he was the person who instigated the theft of the cow. And so that Diyu later on became Devabrata. And the story goes that there was a great king named Shantanu. In his previous birth, he was known as Mahabhisha. Mahabhisha was in the heavenly planets along with many other great sages at the time. And he was in the assembly of Lord Brahma in Brahmaloka. He had attained such a high state of existence by his powerful ruling as a king. But then Ganga Devi was there, and a strong wind came and blew her clothing in such a way that part of her body was exposed. All the sages and saints in the heavenly planet looked in another direction, except Mahabhisha. He stared at Ganga Devi. And because of that, Brahma became a little upset and cursed him to fall down to the earth. And so he fell down to the earth and became a king. Later, he was born again in a kingly family. His father name was Dilipa. And he was a powerful king, very powerful. One day he was out hunting in the forest, and he saw this beautiful, beautiful lady there. And seeing her, he became enchanted by her charm, her beauty, her sweetness, and her apparent innocence. Being a king, it's kind of fashionable that kings like to marry beautiful women. And they propose their self upon because their position is quite glorious, and usually women will accept a king for a husband. Well, he proposed to her marriage, and she was very much attracted and said, yes, I will marry you. My name is Ganga Devi. So it was the same Ganga Devi personification who he saw in the heavenly planets in a different form. And but she said, I will marry you only on one condition. You do not take issue with anything I do. whether it's auspicious or inauspicious. In other words, you don't question my activities. So being very much infatuated by Ganga Devi, he agreed. And so the marriage was completed. And after the first year, a child was born, a son. And immediately after the birth of the child, Ganga Devi took the child and threw it into the Ganga. And this happened successfully for the next 6 children. Each year. Now, Santanu is watching. He doesn't know why his wife is doing that. He remembers her vow that she will marry him only if he doesn't question her, and if he does, she will immediately leave. So after 6 children, when the 7th one was born, she was about to throw that one in the Ganga, but then he said, no, stop. I cannot tolerate it anymore. Why are you throwing all our children into the river? And she immediately smiled and presented him with the child and said, this child is yours to raise. I am going. So she left. And now he was a king without a wife, and that's quite awkward for a king not to have a wife. And he had a son, but he raised his son very carefully, gave him great scriptural knowledge and also great opportunities to learn military arts under the guise of Parasamram, when he became a powerful fighter. After some time, he was again performing austerities, and he noticed while he was performing austerities near the river Ganga that there was something blocking the flow of the river. So he went in that direction to see, and he saw this personality. And the details are a little bit hard for me to recall, all of these details, but he saw a beautiful girl there. Her name was Satyavati, and she was the daughter of a fisherman named Dasaraj. So he became attracted and thought, I do need a wife, and she is very qualified, I can see. Because Prabhupada says that women that are born to fishermen, they have beautiful figures. This is described by Srila Prabhupada. And so he was attracted by her charm, by her beauty. And so he went to her father, Dasaraj, and asked for her hand in marriage. He said, well, this sounds very good, but I can see you have a son. And if my daughter marries you, then her son will not have any stance anywhere. Therefore, I cannot accept your proposal. Because then your son will be the king and my son will be nowhere. And if she has any children, they will also be marginalized, not given much preference. So King Santanu left, but he was very morose. He was unhappy that he wasn't able to marry Satyavati. And Devabrata, his son, was very concerned seeing his father morose, so he asked him one day, and he told him the whole story. And then so Devabrata went to go see the fisherman. And he asked for the proposal of his daughter on behalf of his father. And he said, well, I'll tell you the same thing. You are the son and you will be the king, and therefore my daughter's children will have no place. He said, no, actually, your daughter's child will become the king. And then the fisherman was very calculating. He said, well, yes, that's nice, but you will have children, and they will also vie for the throne, and then there will be competition and a lot of possible fighting. So I cannot allow it. And then Devarata said, well, then in that case, I make a vow that I will remain without becoming married throughout my whole life. I will remain a brahmachari. When he spoke that, a voice from the sky came and said, Bhishma, Bhishma, which means terrible vow, terrible vow. So he had taken a very strong vow for a Kshatriya not to marry at all. It's practically impossible. The nature of the Kshatriya Dharma is to have children and to succeed in ruling the kingdom through their progeny. But he had promised. So when he had promised, Satyavati was given to Santanu, and Santanu married her. And then two children were born, Vichitavirya and Chitrangada. And now Devarata was also given the name Bhishma because he had taken that vow. Chitrangada was ruling the kingdom for a while, but he got into a fight with a Gandharva who had the same name, Chitrangana. The Gandharva was envious because he had the same name, so they had a fight, and the Gandharva won and killed the king. And Vichitavirya was quite unable. His body was not strong at all. He was very unhealthy, and he also wasn't able to have children, so he couldn't rule the throne. So there's we come to the story where Bhishma goes to this sacrifice that is mentioned here by this, it's in that verse we read, and that there were 3 daughters there, and he abducted 3 daughters to bring them back so they could be married to the son. Yeah, they were the 3 daughters. They was the 3 daughters of Kasiraj. Yeah, Ambika and Ambilika and Amba, like that. But he did that simply to bring those girls back so they could be married on behalf of his brother, Vichitavirya. But when they were brought back, Vichitavirya wasn't able to have any children. So then not Parasuram, but Vedavyas was actually the son of I can't remember its dimensions here. Vedavyas, yeah, here we go here. Chitradrahanga, of whom Vichitavirya was the younger brother, was killed by the Gandharva of the same name, Satyavata before him. Yes, so Satyavata, before her marriage to Santanu, gave birth to the master authority of the Vedas called Vyasadeva, known as Krishna Dvaipayana, who was begotten by Parasuram. So Parasuram's son was Vyasadeva, who's now under the guise of his mother, Satyavati. So Satyavati tells Vyasadeva to impregnate these 3 girls, Ambika, Ambalika, but Amba, she developed her attachment to to Santanu after he carried him. Amba, yeah. And so because she did that, she wanted to marry Bhismadev, who had taken the vow not to marry. And of course, Pandu was born. Pandu was born from these women, Pandu, Dhritarashtra, and Vidura. 3 of them came from these 3 women, and one was fathered. The 2 were fathered by by Vyasadeva, and one was fathered by, let's see, no, all three were fathered by Vyasadeva, yeah, on the instructions of his mother, Satyavati. So it's quite an interesting story here. So of course, then when Amba, she wanted to get revenge against Bhishmadev for not marrying her, she went to Parasaram. No, she went to Lord Shiva and performed austerities. And then, no, first she went to Parasaram, yes. And Parasaram said, all right, I will fight him and I will defeat him and then he will marry you. But in the fight, Bhishmadev defeated Parasaram. And Parasaram said, what can I do? He has defeated me. I cannot give him any instructions. So Amba was still revengeful. She went and started to pray to Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva appeared to her and said that actually you'll have to give up your body as Amba and take birth again. And when you do, you'll be born in a particular family, I forget, and you will get a chance to get revenge at Bhishmadev. So this person who Amba was born as Shikandi, and Shikandi was a girl, but she traded her feminine gender for male gender with a yaksha in order to be a soldier against Bhishmadev. She fought on the side of the Pandavas against Bhishmadev because she wanted revenge against Bhishmadev because he had refused to marry her. You see how these intrigues go on even today. It makes like today look like quite like ordinary stories. So later on during the fight, when of course the story is that Bhishmadev was fighting on behalf of Duryodhana and the Kurus. The question comes, why did he take the side of Duryodhana? This is interesting. Against the Pandavas when he had so much affection for Kunti and the Pandavas and their children. He had more affection from them, and he was also a great devotee of Lord Krishna. But because he was alone and had no maintenance, and he was a Kshatriya, he was given employment by Duryodhana, who was willing to support him and give him the position as commander-in-chief, second commander-in-chief of his armies, along with Duryodhana. I mean, not Duryodhana, but Dronacharya. So he was given a big position and he was maintained nicely by Duryodhana. Duryodhana had this ability, kind of a cunning ability, to know a person's weak spot and then to attract that person to come and be on his side by giving that person whatever they needed. He did that with Karna. He did that with Bhishma. But Bhishma had another reason. And this is interesting. This is the hidden reason why he took the side against Krishna and the Pandavas. And I'll tell that reason towards the end of the story because it's more like a finale for the whole pastime. So now he's fighting, but because he has affection for the Pandavas, he's not fighting to his capacity. I'll backtrack a little bit and mention one thing, that his father, Santanu, was so pleased when he was willing to allow his father to marry and take a vow of lifetime brahmachari, that Santanu blessed him and said, because of your sacrifice and your love for me, I give you the blessings that you will only die when you want to die. So Bhishmadev had that power. No one could kill him. He could only die when he decided he wanted to die. So now he's fighting against the Pandavas, and he is powerful. You know, in one day he killed 10,000 of the Pandava soldiers. But still, he wasn't fighting to his capacity. Duryodhana, he understood that you're not fighting to your capacity. He criticized Bhishma. He said, I see, you're not fighting to your capacity. You have too much affection for the Pandavas. Now, this was an insult to a Kshatriya. To call a Kshatriya that he's not fighting to his capacity is a great insult. And so he said, all right, tomorrow I will kill the 5 Pandavas. And I have these 5 arrows, and these 5 arrows will be the death of the 5 Pandavas. And Duryodhana was happy, but Duryodhana said, let me keep those 5 arrows here, and then tomorrow I will give you the arrows at the beginning of the day. Because the Kshatriyas would not fight beyond sunset. When the sun went down, the fighting stopped for the day, and then sometimes even both sides would come together in the tents and they would talk like friends, and then the next day they would be out on the battlefield fighting against each other. So when Krishna understood what Bhishma was going to do, Krishna was concerned. So he went to Arjuna. He said, Arjuna, you remember? Duryodhana has promised you a favor and you have not taken it. Now's the time to take it. He has 5 arrows. Go ask him for those 5 arrows. So Arjuna came, and that was in the evening during the time when they were not fighting. Duryodhana welcomed Arjuna and they were talking. And he said, why have you come? Well, I've come because I want to accept that offer you had offered me previously. Yes, whatever it is, what do you want? What I'm prepared to give. Because when a Kshatriya gives his word, just like Bhismadev, he gave his word not to marry. And he did everything to keep that vow, despite the fact that there was so much opposition for him, in him, to accept a wife. But he kept that vow despite everything. He said that I don't fear anything, not the wrath of Indra coming from the heavenly planets or anything more than not keeping a promise. A Kshatriya is like that, a real Kshatriya will keep his promise even if it causes him to lose his life. His promise is more important. His word is more important than his life. So that's the Kshatriya honor. So now, Arjuna says, well, you have 5 arrows you're holding. Yes, I want those arrows. So immediately, Duryodhana gave the 5 arrows to Arjuna. Now the next day when Bhishma realized, he understood this was the trick of Krishna. And so the battlefield was on. The battle was on the next day. Now this is an interesting thing because when the fighting came on, Krishna knew that Arjuna is no match for Bhismadev. Bhismadev will finish him off in no time. He was so powerful. And so Krishna said, there's only one way you could possibly survive this. You have to take Shikandi. Shikandi was the person who reappeared as a Kshatriya soldier after trading her femininity for masculinity and put him in the front of you. Then you can fight against Bhishma, because Bhishma will not fight against Shikandi, because Bhishma knows the history of Shikandi and know that Shikandi is either a eunuch or a woman, and he will not fight against a eunuch or a woman. So he did that. And in the fight, Bhismadev was kind of frustrated seeing Shikandi there, and therefore he could not fight directly with Arjuna. But then he decided anyway to access his power. So what he did was he decided he started to really fight, and he shot arrows and broke the chariot that Arjuna was on. Arjuna fell from the chariot along with Krishna because Krishna was on the chariot too. And our Bhishma Dev was really serious. And then Krishna broke his promise because Krishna said, I'm coming on the battlefield, but I'm not going to fight. I'm simply going to be on the chariot with you. I will not fight. That is my promise. But seeing his devotee in trouble, Krishna broke his promise. So it's really nicely described in the ninth chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The beautiful vision of Krishna. Krishna waxed anger and he jumped from the chariot, grabbed the broken chariot wheel, and came charging at Bhishma Dev at full force. And it's described that his eyes were like red hot anger, and his charter, which was blowing in the wind, flew from his body while he was coming at Bhishma Dev. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight. Now, Bhishma Dev was so happy because he has a chivalrous rasa with Krishna. That means he fights with Krishna, and that is his loving relationship with Krishna. And so he was shooting arrows into the body of Krishna. And in that fight, it's explained that Krishna was accepting those arrows as a lover accepts the love bites of the beloved. And Krishna was enjoying that, and Bhishma was also enjoying that. But then, of course, Arjuna was there, and Arjuna took the opportunity to fight with Bhishma. And Bhishma didn't fight with Arjuna because Arjuna was protected by Shikandi. And then Bhishma Dev was felled by a series of arrows given by Arjuna. And it's described that his whole body was covered with arrows, and he was unable to fight anymore. So he lay down on the battlefield. As you can see the picture, his whole body is pierced with arrows from his top of his shoulders all the way down to his legs. But he had the benediction that he would not die unless he wanted to die. And so there he was laying on the battlefield. And then the fighting stopped as soon as that happened. And then Krishna took the opportunity because later on, of course, Bhishma Dev laid on the battlefield for approximately 18 more days because this was in the month of December. And it says that the Kshatriyas like to leave the body when the sun traverses the northern hemisphere. And the sun was in the southern hemisphere at that time. So Bhishma Dev laid on the battlefield for a number of days and just giving darshan to everyone who would come. Although he was in pain from the arrows, he tolerated the pain at the same time was giving instructions. Krishna understood that Yudhisthira was very, very unhappy about what had happened in the battle, that so many men and so many soldiers and so many horses, so many elephants died because of him. One needed to be installed on the throne. So Krishna took the opportunity to bring Yudhisthira to Bhishma Dev, and Bhishma Dev instructed Yudhisthira on how to rule the kingdom. And that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful discourse. In fact, it's part of the Shastras. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami has written two books called Leadership 1 and Leadership 2. In Leadership 2 is the instructions given by Bhishma Dev to King Yudhisthira. During that time, Duryodhana came and he brought some cool water for Bhishma Dev to drink. but Bhismadev refused to drink the water. And then Arjuna understood. So Arjuna took his arrow and shot an arrow into the ground, and from that arrow, a well sprang up and water came out. And then that water was given to Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev sent a message to Duryodhana. I'm not interested in accepting any more gifts from you, no matter what it is. And therefore he wanted to show his affection for the Pandavas, and he did so by accepting the water produced by Arjuna. Many great sages, saints, soldiers came to take darshan of Bhishmadev. During that time he was on his deathbed, waiting for the time to depart. And that's a really, really heart-rendering time. Even Krishna himself was personally there offering his respects to Bhishmadev. And then, as I mentioned earlier, why did Bhishmadev take the side of Duryodhana in the fight against the Pandavas when he had more affection and love for the Pandavas? And he knew Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why did he take the side opposite of Krishna? And this is a very interesting point that's brought up from time to time. And that is that Bhishmadev wanted to show the world by his example that if you're against the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you will lose. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how previously you have shown success in whatever you have done, if you oppose the Lord, you will lose. So that's interesting because that applies to us eternally, time immemorial. If we stay connected with Krishna in devotional service, Krishna always wins, and his devotees always achieve the benefit of Krishna winning. He takes care of his devotees, he protects his devotees, he brings his devotees back to him in the spiritual world. So this is an interesting pastime of Bhishmadev. There's much more about his life. Devotees can read the 9th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called The Passing Away of Grandfather Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev is one of the Mahajans. Brahma, Narada, Shiva, the four Kumaras, Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, who else? Bali, King Bali, Sukadev Goswami, and a few others. I can't remember all of the names. Kapila Dev. Yeah, Kapila and Kapila, Manu. These are all Mahajans. And it says in the scriptures, Mahajano Yena Katasapanta, Yamaraj. Yeah, Yamaraj actually speaks the verse that describes these 11 other Mahajans. Mahajano Yena Katasapanta, that the truth of religious principles, because we see what is actually true religious principles. This is a discussion that goes on eternally. How do we understand clearly what is true religious principles? Where are true religious principles actually found? And the verse is, I can't remember the preceding lines, but the last line is Mahajano Yena Katasapanta. Panta means to follow in the footsteps. Maha. One has to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. There's where truth lies. Like that. Tarko Pratishta Srutina Vibhinnam. Can someone find that verse? The first word is Tarko Pratishta. Tarko Pratishta Srutina It's from the Mahabharata. If you look on verses, yeah, it's verse.
Dharmasya tattvam nihita guhaya mahajanena gata sapantha.
Yeah, that's the verse. Tarko patishta shrutinam vibinnam nafsis rishayasya mata nabinnam. The next, there's two more lines. We need to hear all three lines.
Dharmasya tattva nihita guhaya mahajanena gata sapantha.
Yeah. Tarko pratishta shrutina vibinnam dharmasya tattva nihitam guhayam mahajano yena katasapanta. Just follow the Mahajans. Follow those persons who are pure devotees, who are acharyas, who give the understanding of eternal religious principles. So in our case, as ISKCON devotees, we follow Srila Prabhupada. You might find contradictions between what Prabhupada said and what other great souls have said. That really doesn't really have anything to, it will not affect our devotional service. If we follow carefully, strictly, with careful understanding of Srila Prabhupada and how he organized this movement and how he taught the devotees to follow his instructions, that is perfections. Mahajano yena katasapanta. Because get the actual translation of that verse. Tarko pratishta shrutinam vibinnam. If we can find it in one place, the whole translation. Yeah. The dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. So the great sages, they differ from each other. And that difference that gives them the principle of being a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the hearts of an unadulterated, self-realized persons. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans follow. This is a verse spoken by Yudhisthira Maharaj in the Mahabharata Vana Parva. Yeah. It's a verse that is often quoted by the Acharyas. Yeah. So therefore, there are 12 Mahajans, and Bhismadev is one of the Mahajans. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives an explanation of the principles taught by Bhismadev in his position as an Acharya teaching eternal religious principles. Okay, so there's a little bit about this great personality, Bhismadev. So I would suggest devotees take time and read the 9th chapter of the first canto, and you'll get practically many, many more important details about the nature of this great personality. Okay, so we'll stop here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for enlightening us on the topic of Bhishmadev. And thank you for explaining exactly why he fought on the side of Duryodhana. It is a very hard thing for us to understand. Yeah, why would someone who loves the Pandavas so much and still he fought on the wrong side? And he also fought against, like he shot arrows at Lord Krishna, and you explained why he did that too. So thank you so much, Maharaj, for a very beautiful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Or comments, if there's a comment too.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just wanted to say thank you for the beautiful, beautiful class. And as Indu Mataji just said, you gave us the important explanation of why Bhishmadev fought with Duryodhan. Like she said, it's very difficult to understand that. And I'm just very grateful for your class. I'm always grateful for your class, but especially with this one in particular, because there was so much explained that I questioned. So I very much appreciate it. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I do have a question. So why is Bhishma Dev of all the people, why is he given so much significance? Like we are asked to celebrate Bhishma Panchaka and again now Bhishma Ashtami. Yeah. So why?
Well, I would say, from my understanding, that because he's a Mahajan, and just by that pastime, you could see how much love Krishna had for Bhishma Dev. You know, in that ninth chapter of the first canto, towards the end, you get a real indication by these verses and Srila Prabhupada's purport, the feelings that especially the purports, the feelings that Krishna had towards Bhishma Dev. Krishna was practically like a person who was sad that Bhishma Dev was now leaving the world. Yeah, he was. The love that Krishna showed towards Bhishma Dev is quite elevated, quite deep. That's one indication. And two, he stayed alive long enough to instruct Yudhisthira on how to rule the world. Although he never took up a position of ruling, he was the most knowledgeable in that authority, in that understanding and how to rule. His whole life was sacrifice, even from the time he was young, when he sacrificed for his father, and later on he sacrificed for the Pandavas. He was 170 years old when he departed. That's why he was called Grandfather Bhishma. Mhm.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
And how he left his body, that's also, it says, just like birds become quiet at the end of the day, everyone became quiet when Bhishma Dev took his last breath. There was a quietness amongst all the hundreds of people that were surrounding him just before he left. It's a very sweet exit. It's just very heart-rendering when you read that, how he left the world and what was the mood when he left. And he left at his own volition. That was the amazing thing. Which is very instructive. One should be ready to go when your time is up. One should not leave untimely or ahead of time, but when the time comes, you will know it. And then at that time, you will say, my life is over on this plane. Now I move forward to my life in the spiritual world. So everyone will get that opportunity. If we follow very carefully the process of devotional service, when it's time to go, we will know, and there will be no resistance. Wanting to stay here, or wanting to continue our relationships on this level. Bhishmadev was indicative of that. It was time to go, and he chose his time, and everything was perfect. So we can learn from that too, that when death's approach, usually for a devotee, death gives a warning sign that now it's time to wrap up your time in this realm, so it's all over. And the devotee knows, oh, okay, Krishna is calling me. Now my only business is to absorb my consciousness in his devotional service. In other words, become absorbed in thinking of his lotus feet.
Hare
Yes, Maharaj.
Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Sorry. Do you want to say something? Sorry. I will wait.
No, as Maharaj was speaking, I was just realizing that yes, Lord Krishna, he came to see the passing of Bhishmadev, whereas we don't see anyone else having that great fortune. So, of course, he is extremely dear to
Yeah.
the Lord. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Please go ahead, Deepti Mataji.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much for the lovely class. Can I ask one question, Guru Maharaj, please? So up till now, we have been listening that Bhishmadev just fought with Kauravas because of the duty he has, and he had taken the vow. Was that not one of the reason, isn't it? It was only reason that he wanted to show the world that you cannot fight against Supreme Lord.
Well, he also, from the material point or the external point, and you'll hear it discussed that if someone takes care of you and maintains you, you become obliged to that person. So that's what Duryodhana did. He took care of Bhishmadev really nicely because Bhishmadev had no connection with anything, being a Kshatriya. So Duryodhana gave him so much facility, everything that he needed to live, and gave him some position within his army, big position. So he felt obliged to Duryodhana. So that was from the external point of view. You'll find that with great souls, and this happens a lot, there are the apparent reasons why something is happening or doesn't happen, and there's the more remote reason. Just like, without going into detail, why did Lord Chaitanya take sannyas? There's no need for him to take sannyas. But there's an internal reason why that Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. which is not mentioned so readily. The external reasons are given, but the internal reason is not talked about.
Yeah. Also, at the same time, was there any particular reason for Dronacharya and Krupacharya as well, similar to like Bhishmadev had to fight with the in favor of Kauravas?
That's interesting. Yeah, also Dronacharya was nicely maintained by Duryodhana. Duryodhana was an expert diplomat, and so he knew how to offer so many gifts, situations, positions to these persons in order to get them to fight on his side. With Kripacharya, I'm not sure. Kripacharya is a great personality, but Kripacharya lived on after the Battle of Kurukshetra. But Kripacharya, that he was fighting on the side of Duryodhana also? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He was, yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a great personality too. He was born in a very unusual way. Yeah. And that's mentioned in the ninth canto about Kripacharya's appearance. Yeah, I was always curious about Kripacharya, and I did a little research about his life, but it doesn't give much indication of why he fought on the side of Duryodhana. The kings of the world lined up against each other according to they took different sides. Some took the sides of the Pandavas, some took the sides of Duryodhana. It says practically every king in the world sent their armies to fight on one of the two sides. And Duryodhana was his military prowess was greater than the Pandavas. I think he had something like, I don't know how many, 11 Oxahani divisions of soldiers and infantrymen, chariots, and the Pandavas had 8. 11 versus 7. Okay, yeah, 7. Thank you. So, yeah, his military power was greater. But then again, where if you're against Krishna, you lose.
But Guru Maharaj, if you think that way, that Dronacharya and Kripacharya were Brahmin originally, and they could have said that, oh, being a Brahmin, we don't want to participate in the war. And they were quite high elevated souls. And if they didn't want it to go against Pandavas, they had a reason not to fight, but they didn't accept that reason. Is there any particular reason for that?
You have to, I actually can't answer that question. Dronacharya's, yeah. Kripi was married to Dronacharya. Kripi was the sister of Kripacharya.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some connection there.
Yeah.
The two children were found in the forest after they were born. They were abandoned and later found and taken in. Both Kripa and Kripi were taken in by, I believe, by King Drupada. I'm not sure. But you have to do a little research and see what are the details of their life and find out why they accepted. Because, yeah, Dronacharya was a Brahmin. So is his son, Asvatthama. He was a Brahmin too.
Mm. So far, what we have heard is because of the attachment to Aswathama, and Aswathama was, like as you mentioned, that Duryodhana was very clever, and he got Aswathama in his side, and he pursued Aswathama to ask Dronacharya to fight for him. Was it? I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but this is what was heard before.
It must be you probably find it in the Mahabharata. It's not mentioned in the Bhagavatam.
Oh.
Again, I can't honestly answer the question. I just don't know.
Mm. I was just wondering. When I
It's a
read.
point of research. Take some time and research it out, and then next week you can tell us all the answers.
Okay.
I'd be interested in finding myself.
Yeah. When I read Mahabharata, I had this question, but I wasn't getting chance to ask anyone. But today, luckily, as we are discussing about this little bit of Mahabharata, I said, let me ask you this question because I was like, don't know.
I don't, my list of great souls, I don't have any information on Kripacharya. You have to do a research on Google and see what you can find on Kripacharya. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
This one person. This is in the 9th canto, I believe.
Mm.
Yeah. They were found and brought to Santanu Lalitota. People was taught Dhanurveda, martial arts by his father, and became one of the Kuru's martial teachers. Huh? So it seems like he was brought up by Shantanu, which was, a Kshatriya family. So it doesn't say that he was a Brahmana. I think he was, though, because he was born of the sage Saradwan.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a little history. But being born as a Brahmin but raised as a Kshatriya. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah. So let's. I think we do a round of japa before we end the program. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. So it's a nice way to follow up the holy name. Everyone get comfortable, sit straight, and begin. Jai Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Venganandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Thank you so
Shamagori,
much.
Shamagori, are you there?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Every time you always ask me to tell a joke.
Yes,
You want to hear
Maharaj.
one?
Yes.
Okay, there's a feedback coming in, so it's gotta somebody's Feedbacking. Okay, so I'll tell you a joke because I know you like jokes, and last time I didn't do it because I didn't. All right. So you know, in our temples we have Mangal Arti, right? And then we have what's next? Tulsi Puja, right?
Shrigadev prayers.
We have Shringadev prayers, that's right. And then we have Tulsi Puja. And then after that we do Japa, right? Correct?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. So the question is, this is my joke. The question is, what do you call a person who comes every day just at the end of Mangal Arti? Just before the conch shell blows, they come just before the Mangal Arti ends. We call him a member of the fan club. Right? What do you call a person who comes after that? What's after that? The Shringa prayers. So they're members of the Lions Club.
Lights.
Nice, good one, Guru Maharaj.
And what do you call a person who comes after that?
Members of the garden club.
Correct, members of the Garden Club. Okay, so that's the joke.
Oh,
And I added one more.
yes.
This was and then in the next one is, what do you call a person who comes after that? I call members of the Rotary Club.
They circumambulate the
Rotary Club is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, the Rotary Club. Okay, so I hope you're happy with my joke.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see each other again on Friday.
Yeah.
Everybody keep well and
Thank you,
stay
Maharaj.
close to the holy name.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your
Maharaj. Hare
very,
Krishna.
very
Pranam,
wonderful
Maharaj. Hare
association. Please
Krishna.
accept your humble obeisances.
Maharaj, Chandra Pranam.
Thank you
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Pranam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna.
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you so much.